senators on both sides of the aisle agree that the Supreme Court confirmation hearings have been civil so far. And several senators stressed the importance of treating people respectfully despite differences of opinion. Here's part of what Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina had to say about how we should treat nominees.
But it just appalls me that we can have such a system in America, that if a conservative woman wants to stand out and say, I love my family just as much as you love yours, and my faith means just as much to me as it does you, that all of a sudden there comes some kind of weirdo. And a guy like Justice Alito, who's in the same type situation you're in, being in a group, doesn't agree with everything they do or what people may say at a meeting he didn't go to, all of a sudden they own it. You know, this stuff needs to stop. Our people deserve better respect, and I hope when this is over, people will say you were at least well treated, even if we don't agree with you.
Joining me now to talk about what else we learned from today's hearing is Katherine Beck Johnson, Research Fellow for Legal and Policy Studies at Family Research Council. Katherine, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Joseph.
Well, tell us how you would describe the events of today.
I think civil is an excellent word to describe it. And the Republican senators have really been stressing just how different this hearing is versus the two most recent ones, Justice Barrett and Justice Kavanaugh. For Justice Kavanaugh, Senator Grassley could hardly get through his opening remarks as there were protesters long before any of the accusations had occurred. There were protesters with Justice Barrett. We remember lots of protesters dressed as handmaidens outside the room. And so this is very different. There's no protesters, there's no screaming, there's no shouting, there's no accusations of her personal life. It's very much just the nuts and bolts. Was this your judicial philosophy? Is this what you did as a lawyer at the Sentencing Commission? And she's treated as a professional, as a judge, and as a nominee to the Supreme Court of the United States, not as Senator Graham just said, as some weirdo. So it's very much a large contrast between how the Democratic nominee is being treated versus how the Republican nominees have been treated.
Katherine, do you think part of the reason these hearings may be different than the most recent two other confirmation hearings we've been through is the fact that this is not going to change the balance of power on the court? This is essentially one liberal replacing another liberal. Do you think that emotions might be lower simply because, generally speaking, the status quo balance of power will remain on the court?
I think that certainly could be a large portion of it. But I also think even before that, Justice Kavanaugh, when he was a judge, he was known as a more moderate judge. He wasn't one of the far right's picks initially. So when he was replacing Justice Kennedy, who was also a swing vote, it almost was though we were getting a swing vote for a swing vote. And so the fact that Judge Jackson is being treated just as a liberal for a liberal could be playing into it. But we saw the Democrats playing this game even when it was trading essentially apples for apples. So I think this is just a tactic of the left, how they think it's acceptable to treat nominees versus how the right approaches the nominees.
I think that's a fair point. And I think to put this entire process in context, many of the left's biggest victories policy-wise have not gone through Congress. They have gone through the Supreme Court. They have a lot at stake at the Supreme Court. Things like abortion, Roe versus Wade, same-sex marriage with Obergefell did not go through Congress. Nobody accountable to the people voted on those issues. They were simply decreed or invented by the Supreme Court. They do have a lot invested in what happens at the Supreme Court, which might be part of the reason why they care so much about these confirmation processes. Now, Katherine, I want to get into some of the questions that she was asked as we try to understand who she is, what her judicial philosophy would be. Here's an interaction she had with Senator Cornyn. Let's go ahead and play clip one, and then I want to get your reaction.
When the Supreme Court decides that something that is not even in the Constitution is a fundamental right, and no state can pass any law that conflicts with the Supreme Court's edict, particularly in an area where people have sincerely held religious beliefs, doesn't that necessarily create a conflict between what people may believe is a matter of their religious doctrine or faith and what the federal government says is the law of the land?
Well, Senator, that is the nature of a right, that when there is a right, it means that there are limitations on regulation, even if people are regulating pursuant to their sincerely held religious beliefs.
Katherine, what's your reaction to her perspective on the nature of rights and the potential of conflict with the government?
Was troubling to me. She didn't seem to even recognize that there is a tension between the rightly held religious belief that marriage is between a man and a woman versus the Obergefell decision handed down by the Supreme Court. There certainly is a tension, and that tension is being manifested every day in our country. When we look at cases like Masterpiece Cake Shop, are people being forced to bake cakes for gay marriages? And so this is an ongoing question in our society, the very tension of the religious view that has been deeply and sincerely held for as long as time versus this new Obergefell decision. And the fact that she simply only wanted to address that this is a right and there is nothing or deeply held religious view can infringe upon that for really show that she does not even remotely understand the views of millions of Americans, the religious views of millions of Americans, and that she didn't even seem to be wanting to grapple with the tension there. So I viewed this as a very troubling answer to Senator Cornyn.
But I think her perspective does represent the mainstream progressive view on this issue. They genuinely have no understanding of why someone wouldn't want to, for example, participate in a same-sex wedding. And so there's not much sympathy for that situation. And there's certainly no interest in suggesting that the First Amendment protects your right not to do things you don't want to do, not to say things you don't want to say. I want to get into another topic. She was asked about court packing as well. Let's play clip 4, and I want to get your reaction to that.
It is a policy question for Congress, and I am particularly mindful of not speaking to policy issues because I am so committed to staying in my lane of the system.
Katherine Beck Johnson, is that a fair response to the question?
This was another troubling answer from her. She very clearly can say that court packing is wrong. Justice Ginsburg spoke out on it, one of the farthest left justices on the court. Justice Breyer, who Judge Jackson will be replacing, has spoken out on it. There is no infringement on the independent judiciary Supreme Court to say that court packing is wrong. Many justices have spoken out on it on the left and the right. It is stronger when the sitting justices work to protect the institution of the court. And if she's going to be a sitting justice on the court, she should have no problem working to protect it rather than saying that she's just going to be neutral on the topic. So this was, again, a very troubling answer from her.
Katherine, on the issue of court packing, of course, this entire confirmation process is taking place in a political environment. If she were to oppose court packing like Justice Breyer had, like Justice Ginsburg had, she would face tremendous opposition from her own base, from the base of the left. Do you think they would actually oppose her nomination? Because it seems the support for court packing on the left is as strong as the opposition to court packing on the right is.
That's an interesting question, Joseph. It's hard to know. I mean, I think the fact that she's towing the line and not speaking out against it very much shows who her base is, who her support's coming from. So it isn't groundbreaking to think that they would retaliate against her if she spoke out against their wishes and demands. It's hard to know exactly, of course, what would happen.
Katherine, I know we have several more days of questioning that are going to take place here. There have been some concerns expressed about her views on things like critical race theory, also concerns about her views on sentencing. And Senator Hawley has raised 7 specific cases involving child pornographers where it's his belief that she was too soft. Did those issues come up today?
Some of them did. And I think that, again, the White House is withholding lots and lots and lots of documents on her time at the Sentencing Commission. So what Senator Hawley has exposed is just the very surface of what is public and what we've been able to gain access to. But like I said, the White House is withholding many documents. So it's hard to know exactly how in-depth it is and what exactly we can ask her about. And keep in mind, this is the same party that said that Justice Kavanaugh was being rushed through and they weren't able to review all the documents. Whereas here they are intentionally withholding lots of documents. So it'll be interesting to see the questions over the next tomorrow, especially based on what information we are able to access.
Katherine, tell us a bit more about that. What documents have not been withheld, and is anything being done in an effort to get those documents?
There's a lot of documents from her time at the Sentencing Commission. So here we see while she was at the Sentencing Commission, she was very lenient with child sex offenders. We obviously don't know what the White House is hiding, what they're withholding, but it seems it would be things that they think would be damaging to her public image. And as we have already come up with, as you said, 7 instances of her being very lenient with child sex predator sentencing, then it leads us to believe that there's more very, very soft on criminal actions of her time at the Sentencing Commission. And the American people deserve to know what her views are on criminals as crime is rising in our country.
Katherine, it's early in the process. In just a few seconds, has anyone declared their opposition or support to Judge Jackson yet?
Right now, it's very early in the process. The Republicans are trying to tell her that they are giving her a fair shake and that they're going to wait until they've all met with her and her hearings. But I think it's very clear to know where most of the senators lie just based on her judicial philosophy.
Katherine Beck Johnson, thanks so much for your time as always.
Thanks for having me.